Hi everyone. So good evening. Uh, so before that, I will just like to check my audio. So host, am I clearly audible?
Yes, sir. You're audible, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Hi everyone. So welcome to yet another live session by THiNC Institute of Design. So today's session is all about the NIFT situation test. And first of all, congratulations to those who have been shortlisted for the NIFT situation test. So you will be on its preparation. So it's starting from April 1st. So you'll be on its preparations. So we have come up with an exciting session for you. Some points you just need to keep for the situation test. So today in this session, our main topic will be the write-up for the NIFT situation test. So basically, the NIFT situation test, which tests you at a hands-on test to evaluate the candidate's skill for material handling and innovative ability on a given situation and a given set of materials. Along with that, you just have to prepare a write-up also. So with the parameters which you have been created that model or the kind of material handling model or product or any kind of design you have prepared for. Along with that, you also have to prepare a write-up, explain the concept behind the model you have constructed. So again, it is also a valid one, the write-up. It also have marks also. So some of you might not consider that important point, the write-up, how to write, how to create a good write-up, what is the point you just need to consider for the write-up. So that's why we have come up with this particular session. So the one which you have been never, I hope you haven't been consider a write-up. What are the things you just need to consider to write that particular thing? What are the points you need to consider while writing about a product or the thing you have been created? So in this particular session, discussing that, we have Nandini Syju along with us. She has been got the All India rank 7 in 2018 for NIFT examination, the All India rank 7. So she is the one among the students who have been lastly attended the NIFT situation test. So with that experience, she will be sharing the points which you need to consider the write-up for the NIFT situation test. So I welcome Nandini Syju for this particular live session. So Nandini, it's all yours.
Hi, am I audible? Just let me know.
Yes, you are clearly audible.
Okay, awesome. So, hi everyone, I'm Nandini Syju, and like they said before, I secured an All India rank of 7 2 years ago, and currently I am a third year student pursuing industrial design in NID Andhra Pradesh. But today I'm here to talk to you guys about NIFT situation test and specifically about the writing portion, because it's something that students skim over. Because first off, after you guys are done with your previous session, previous exam, right? I hope the slides are moving, right? Just let me know.
Yes, it's moving.
Okay. So basically, after your first round, you are given a small amount of time, and there's a lot of pressure, and there's a lot of filtering that happens, and most of y'all spend most of your time trying to manipulate your hands and get used to the physical media and get used to the whole aspect of creating models, or timing yourself and the whole craft aspect of it. And 90% of the time, even if you want to, people just skim over the write-up part, and some people don't even realize that there is this write-up part. And it is just so fundamentally important that if you actually crack this write-up, you can actually land an amazing rank, because it's something that not just supports what you create, supports your model, but it's also not just something that complements it, but there are certain aspects of what you create that the jury panel, because the jury panel goes through like hundreds and thousands of students, right? So there are certain aspects or certain key pointers of what you created that they might not even notice, or they might skim through, and your write-up can really bring out the ultimate potential in what you are creating. And that is one of the reasons why it's extremely important that you spend some time to uh, a little bit refine yourself. Most of you guys do know how to write in English, and write well in English is what I meant. A lot of people know a great deal about literary devices and how to write, creative writing, passages, essays, and all of that. But today we're not taking an English class. It's not about that. Today's perspective is more about how can you approach this to get a better shot, because there's only one shot you get and you got to shoot your shot, right? So in what ways can we approach this? In what ways can we approach this writing so that it's not an eloquent piece of writing as an art piece? Rather, how can this be efficient in a maximized manner to support what you have created and to put you in the limelight and put you aside and set you apart from the other thousands of students out there? And this is really another reason why I don't recommend you guys follow some sort of creative writing template, or I don't recommend you guys follow this whole intro subject body, or like, no templates. We don't do templates here, because that just puts you as one in another 100, another 200 that are just like gonna be grouped together, and you're just gonna be mediocre, and you're just gonna be pushed aside, and that seat is just gonna go to someone who's unique, right? So these are all the things that I hope to cover today, and I hope to cover properly. I mean, I hope to convey this properly. So let's really dive into it, because I really want you guys to see this not as an intimidating essay writing piece, rather a tool that is just going to, or like metaphorically speaking, because we are having a session about writing, a limelight that will make your product stand out better. Yeah. So first off, let's just look at everything from the perspective of the jurors, or the perspective of the people who are going to grade you, and ultimately that will become your rank, and potentially that could become the rest of the 4 years ahead of you. It could make or break it. So always, this is a classic rule, first impression, guys, and it will make a difference. It will make a ton of difference, because ultimately these guys are also some sort of professors or teachers, and we all know from high school that it does make an impression. Don't scribble, don't make those little creases in your paper, and even if you're erasing, just make sure it's neat, okay? And we will talk about not even erasing, and that will come in the following slides, but like your final sheet, basically, most probably 90% of the time they are going to give you this extra empty A4 sheet, or it is going to be an extra sheet that is stuck to it's going to be stapled to the question paper. Something like that is what is going to happen, and that's been the pattern so far. So most of the times it's not going to be labeled, it's not going to be ruled, it's just going to be an empty sheet of paper. And I want you guys to make sure that it looks formal, it looks professional, it looks neat. I don't want smudge lines. The best policy is to just quickly just draw a margin. Don't fold the paper. I know people who fold and margin, no, please, but like, draw a margin or have an imaginary margin. You guys haven't even started your first year of design, so most of you don't know how to like stretch out a straight line. Most of you all, some of you all are talented, but so just make sure that the lines are neat, make sure that the paragraphs are structured, they're crisp and to the point. And sometimes bullet points are a great way to go with this, especially listing down if there are a lot of things that you want to list down and get across. bullet points are a great way to do it, because 90% of the time your content, the examiner is not going to read all of it. Okay, I'm sorry, but that is how things work, because these guys have a lot to read and nobody's gonna like check on them ki, oh, are you reading or not? You never know, right? So what's the most efficient thing you can do? Make your content skimmable. So there are two kinds of people who read the whole thing and people who just skim through it. And sometimes there's even a third kind of person that, you know, skims through it and then they realize, oh, there is some stuff in this, let me go back and read it one more time, and if I think this is valuable, let me grade it properly. Like, you know, there's all kinds of people out there who read content differently and evaluate in their own particular style. So you have to cater to all their needs so that your work is your work and your writing is communicated to any kind of person that is reading your paper. So make it skimmable, as in if there are main points, make sure that the points are like super highlighted, as in you can write in capital letters, you can write in bullet points, or maybe if it's something, what I did personally, I underline them. So these are certain tricks you can go through if there is like an extremely important point that you want to put forward. Like imagine, let's take a situation where you designed a shoe and you want to talk about the material aspects of it. Like this shoe is made of hypothetically this material. So this material was used for this functionality purpose. So those kind of things are like extremely important, and it makes sure it kind of lets those people know that okay, this student here has a potential to think like a designer, you know. So this is very important. It's critical that you put this information at their face. So those kind of things can be bullet pointed. So just make sure that in first look the examiner just doesn't get disgusted and repulsed by your paper, so that they just don't even like try to read it. And I know I'm asking for a lot, because I was also under a lot of pressure when I was doing this paper, because especially for me, because I didn't even know that, I wasn't that well aware, and I didn't even know that we had this session in the section in the first place. And what I did is I finished all my work, and then later I just flipped the paper after I had like what 5 minutes left, and that's when I saw this, and I just quickly, you know, and it felt really bad. So just make sure that, you know, it's that doesn't happen. Manage your time accordingly so that you have time for the model, then you have time to cool down, think, and then move ahead to the next task, that is writing this write up. And this could really make or break and communicate your product or whatever you've created, depending on the question, in a much better manner. All right, moving on. Like I said, set up the feng shui circle, guys. And by this, I really mean that it's like a rush. It's a haze. Okay, everything is like a rush when you're in that examination center, and it's a creative process. So you really need to, like, after you're done with the model, you need to like take a second to like breathe, calm down, maybe take a second or two. I know it's a very time crunching thing, but sometimes not taking a second to like sip a little bit of fresh air could be counterproductive. Rather, I suggest you take a little bit of space for yourself and then start writing. And what I did personally was, it kind of looked crazy at that time, and I remember a little bit, you know, kids in my right and left were judging me, but I just had my product, and just because I created the concept, let's just call it concept, there was a lot of waste paper, bits and pieces, broken toothpicks on the table. I spent like a good 5-10 minutes clearing that out, and people were judging me. But to be honest, that clearing it out kind of let me kind of decompress from that whole, you know, mindset of creating this product. And like also like everything what just happened, what I did, that kind of like sunk into my brain in retrospect. And then I could really get into, because it just everything, I just gave myself a moment to marinate what just happened, what I just created. And that really gave me some space to really, you know, write better. So clear up your space physically and also mentally declutter, and that will actually help in writing a much better piece than what you would have written if you didn't. But again, just be smart about it, guys. If you have like just 3 minutes left, don't do this. Okay. But it's all about time management. So just make sure you're always on the clock. And when you start writing, I don't want you guys to start immediately. And that is what I'm going to talk about next. Drafting. So this might sound like a long process, but this is not supposed to take more than 40 seconds. Okay. So this is where you just plan out. Okay. You just look at your creation and you look at what you have in your head, like what you want to write raw. Maybe you'll have some features, some points. Maybe you've done some cool stuff with the joinery and you want to talk about it. I love joineries personally because I am an industrial design student. And sometimes you want to talk about the colors. Like I have used yellow for the sunset and it represents the dawn of a new break or anything. So there's a lot of aspects you can talk about. Sometimes you can talk about functionality. So this is a lot of random information. Sometimes you want to talk about your workflow. Maybe it's like I picked this paper and then I realized that didn't work, so I picked that paper, you know. Maybe you want to talk about that, like whatever sets you apart from the crowd, just do it. But do it in an organized fashion, and that is why we do drafting. And by drafting, I don't mean you sit and write an entire essay and then rewrite it. We don't have the time, space, or luxury for that. I'm talking bullet points inside your head, and then maybe if you have some scrap paper left from your model or wherever, then you can just take a little pencil and just scribble down on the corner of the scrap paper. I'm emphasizing again on scrap paper. Just quickly write down how it will look like. First intro, and then talking about functionality, and then I'm going to talk about color psychology, and then I'm going to talk about the form and how like the pointy sails represent this, or something like that, because the question asks for something for this. Or if it's some product, then you can talk about the client later, and then you kind of sum it up together, and then you close it, and that's how you conclude. So see how I've made this kind of body. And please do not use this as a draft. It will not set you apart from the crowd. But see how I've come up with like a kind of structure, and then I will use that as a thread to write down my piece. So that is called drafting in this context. Just quickly, whatever in this context points. So in that time, it's not super refined, but at the same time, it will give you the confidence ki, this is what I'm going to do, and I have this much time to write it. Now all I have to think about is fancying it out and like making it legible and neat, and it will calm you down so much. So if it works for you, draft it out in paper. Don't use more than 40-45 seconds, and then write it down. And sometimes it might not work for you, especially if you're like a person who once you get into the zone and do a task, you will never finish unless you're like completely satisfied and you're a perfectionist. Then maybe drafting is not your thing. Maybe you should just start from the top. So whatever, depending on your personality type. But for the better half of us, for the most of us, this is something that works, and that is one reason why I've put it in my presentation and I'm talking about it. So that's why I put not for everyone though. Okay, so moving on, English. So let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that is the English language, especially because this is an exam for design college, and it's a nationally reputed design college. And a lot of students out there are so nervous because they're like, I don't speak fluent English. I don't even have an accent. And people say all sorts of, I've heard all sorts of things. Okay. Like people have said stuff like grammar, spelling. Okay. That I can understand. But you do not have to be someone who articulates things in an extremely fancy manner. And basically, to put it out there raw, you don't have to be such Shashi Tharoor, okay? Like you can just be a normal person who can write basic, simple English neatly, legibly, and communicate what you're trying to represent, and that's all that matters. Because sorry, yeah, hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, okay, yeah. Because the point really over here is they're not gonna judge you based on your language skills. They're not gonna judge you based on did this person use big words or not. They're not gonna judge you based on how many literary devices you've used or how many metaphors you've used, you know, those kind of things. They're not gonna judge you based on those things at all. And I strongly believe that a few spelling and grammar mistakes are allowed. So give yourself some space to breathe, because the purpose of English language here is not a medium of judgment but a medium of communication. So as long as you keep it simple and everything is to the point, you're good to go. And if you're someone who's really not at all confident or proficient with the English language, then the safest thing to do will be to bullet point everything, because in that way you don't have to worry about grammar. You just have to like communicate. But if you are someone who is from like an English medium educational background, or is someone who is confident with writing, go crazy. But also remember, by the end of the day, the purpose is to just express. And the expression is what we will continue talking about next. But I hope this is clear. Okay, do not get intimidated that oh my god, it's English, it's an English essay writing entrance competition. It is not. It is just them trying to understand what kind of person you are and how you think, not how you write. All right, so moving on. The writing is all subjective. So this is interesting, because there's, so far I've talked about a lot of random things that you can write in your piece. So depending on what your piece is, depending on what your question is, your writing obviously changes. Okay, so if it's a product, it changes and it's drastically different from a drawing. And obviously that's not gonna happen because it's a studio test. But like imagine if you did do like a logo for like a product that you created, and you've drawn the logo and stuck it on the product, then you could talk about it. Obviously then it changes, the context changes. So everything is subjective, and that's why I need you guys to like let loose and like not have any kind of templates in mind, because everything changes. Because let's see, for instance, okay, and I could talk about this well because of my ID background. Let's talk about a product. Okay, and let's assume that I've designed the shoe, this footwear, for a sports person who is also having some sort of ankle problem, or some, let's see we designed a shoe for someone who doesn't want to bend to put it on. Okay, like those cool Nike shoes that came on air. So you could talk about the product, but before that you talk about the problem. Okay, so that is a lot of things you talk about. You talk about where all these issues come up. Maybe you could talk, then you move on to talking about the client or the user, the person, and then you talk about your solution and how it kind of, how the attributes of the solution tackle the problem. And then you move on to breaking down how you've approached the solution and how you've used these materials in front of you and how you envision the product to be as a concept. So basically you're pitching it, you're kind of selling it. And so this is one flow, and this is completely different from like a model. Like imagine, like for me personally, I had to in my exam create a, sorry, in my exam I had to create a trophy for a sailors competition where they won. So it was like I created a ship by itself. Like I kind of stitched the sails and everything. So in that, my process flow was completely different, because there was like, yes, there was a client, but I wasn't solving a problem. Rather, I was trying to, it was more of like a symbolic piece, or it was more of a piece where I could talk about, how it's like things I talked about included like how it's directional to the top, like the ship looked like that, it was going like that. So it's like a symbol for like progress, or like it's really dominating and things like that. Or like I put like a yellow background, so that's like how after like sailing for a long time, you see the horizon, the sunset, because it's the end of the day and you won. So like those kind of things. So like it it changes according to what you've created, like what your content, what you want to write about changes according to what you've created. But the thing that stays consistent is that you kind of sell the same thing. You sell yourself, and you kind of sell it. Okay, I am a person who is willing to design, and I think I have a knack for it, and this is what I know so far, and with these resources, this is what I've created, and I know how to talk about it. That's all that stays consistent throughout this. But depending on what the question is, your content can completely change. So again, I'm telling you guys, just please don't stick with a creative writing template and go with it. Just let loose and just express yourself. Okay, moving on. Okay, so this one is quite interesting because different people have different takes to this. Some people, what I mean by this, let me explain first, is that when you're creating something like this, one year there was a question where you had to design maybe like a room or a playground. So some people went for like a Disney themed space, or something of like a rainforest themed space, something like that. So this is interesting because for some people, themes are something that you have like a direction to it. Okay, so like now I can stick to this, and now I have something to talk about. But sometimes in some scenarios, it restricts you a lot, so like it kind of like puts you in that zone, and it kind of narrows your thinking. So you just have to, like, it's always great, and I also recommend using themes, but you just have to be really careful as to not let that anchor you down in a negative sense, but rather give you some sort of direction, and you have your own individuality to what you're working with. Okay, just because you are doing something Star Wars does not mean you just put some retro themed things, laser beam and baby Yoda. You have to think outside the box even then, and you have to write outside the box. But always, even if when you were creating the product, okay, this is also a cool point. Like, this is what I did too. When you're creating the product, there's so much happening in your head, you might not even think of a theme. But then later you're writing, you're more cool, you're more chilled out. You could always like look at it and be like, huh, this looks like it's like Star Wars theme. Maybe let me just write that down, like it'll look good. But my point here is that writing about these things like themes, aesthetics, or the genre or the art style, it kind of makes you look more, or it makes you come off as a more versed student in the field of design, or someone who's more interested in this field than like a total rookie. So it's always a good practice to use more designery lingo and use more terms that are design oriented, and kind of make you come off as someone who's genuinely interested in the field. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move on. Now this is an important point, guys, because it kind of, what I'm going to talk about here is a kind of tone in which you want to write. And by tone, I mean when you're writing, you are going to write the same content. You're going to write about what you've come up with. You're going to write about how you're solving something, if you want to mention that, or your techniques, your methodologies, anything, color psychology, form psychology, those kind of things. If you're interested, the anthropology of it. I'm sorry if I'm throwing a lot of big words at you, but they're nothing. You can just Google it. It's just simple stuff. Yeah. But my point here is a tone should be always a very pitch tone. So you're always pitching your thing, you're always selling your thing, you're always being like, hey, this is what I can do. Hey, look, this is my product. This is great. So that should be your tone. It should be optimistic, it should be open, it should be confident, and it should. So what I mean by that is like there are certain things that a lot of people do to not sound that confident, because see, if you're selling something, especially yourself, you're selling yourself like pick me, that kind of thing, right? So you cannot really use excuse me. Yeah, just give me 1 second. I'm back. So yes, you cannot really sorry, yeah, what I'm saying is that you cannot really use words that are less confident. Like for example, you cannot really use maybe, or you cannot use words like if, or something that is not that something that doesn't show you as coming off as strong, or something that doesn't show you as coming off as confident or open. So that is what I'm talking about. So you should always go with words like my product is like this, or it's not like I wanted to make it look like that. No, I'd rather have you use stronger words. And that is what this is all about. And this is how you kind of pitch your product and make it look more cool and make it look more strong. So next point, this is quite important, and this is symbolism. Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, there was just some network issue and I'm trying to fix that. But yes, next point is symbolism. And over here, this is quite important because this is something that designers love, and this is something that designers really want to push forward, and they want to work with. So there are certain ways in which you can work around symbolism, and that include things like color psychology. And this is something I really want to talk about. So in this, there is form psychology, color psychology, but also the thing about symbolism is you shouldn't really overdo it. You shouldn't really push a lot, because then it will look like you're trying too hard. And that is something that we cannot work with, because that is like the dark side of symbolism. We cannot do that. So that is there, but basically what we need is like a moderate amount, and it's always healthy to have symbolism in your work. And that is one thing. Just give me 1 second. I'm so sorry about this. Yes, symbolism. So yeah, all right, I'm so sorry about this. So basically what happened is yeah, basically you have to work with symbols, and over here you can do certain things with it. You can do color psychology, you can do form psychology, and you can work around that. And just don't overdo symbolism, that's all. So moving on. Yeah, trying too much. So this is one interesting example that I really loved and I really push forward. And this is the example that the curtains were blue. So this is a joke among creative writers. So there was this murder scene, and the person just said that the author just wrote that the curtains were blue. And this was a scene part of English textbooks, okay? And most of the teachers out there just went around teaching the students, high school students, that Yes, the curtains were blue because this is very deep, and the curtains were blue because you have to know that the author was, I mean, the main character was sad, and there was melancholy. And then a few years later, the author came out and said, "Dude, I didn't really intend anything. I just wanted the curtains to be blue." That's all. So this is an example of bad symbolism, and how you tackle it is that, does the thing, whatever you've created, need symbolism to communicate it? If yes, then it's good symbolism. If it doesn't need that blue curtain to communicate melancholy, then it's just an extra. It's just not part of what you're thinking on, what you're working with, and therefore it is not necessary, hence making it bad symbolism. And that is how it works. So this is an important point, shape psychology. And over here, it's quite simple. You just look it up, and basically it's about how cognitively, if you look at round things, we think of them as sweet, we think of them as warm and comforting. Triangles could be security, like the pyramids, their strength, their stability, but also they could be sharp, they could be a little intimidating, you know. Squares could mean like professionalism, like most of the logos that have something to do with professional forms are squares. So things like that. Hexagons sometimes even go into biomimicry, and it works in different ways. So you could also like talk about how you've used shapes and certain forms, in a very abstract sense. You could kind of like pitch it that this is what is happening, and that is something that you could always add into your piece of writing to make it interesting. Oh yes, this is sorry, just give me 1 second. Yes, okay, I'm back. So this is quite interesting. Biomimicry, right? A few years ago in our NID question paper, this example came. So this is the kingfisher, and that is the bullet trains of Japan. So this is one example of biomimicry where the designer has taken inspiration from nature to kind of bring forward an element, or like, just, it's not like biomimicry is not like you take the entire species, or you take the entire form of the bird and turn that into something, or turn that into a product. Most of the times it's like you take one element of it. So in this case, this was the form, it was the form of the beak, and you took inspiration from that form to create something. And in this particular case, it's quite interesting, and I'll talk about it. So you get an insight of how you kind of talk about these kind of things. In this one, back in the day, the Japanese bullet trains, right, when they used to go into tunnels, they used to kind of create this very disturbing sound called a sonic boom that used to happen because of this high speed train coming into this tiny tunnel, creating like a huge influx of pressure. So this was called the sonic boom, and it created a lot of disturbance for the neighbors. So a lot of Japanese engineers and designers and people from all across fields were confused, and they've tried to break their head about how to solve this problem, because the sonic boom happens because of that kind of sudden shock between, the tunnel and the outside, because the tunnel is like cooler air and it's like a different pressure, and then you suddenly go inside, you guys get the picture. So it was like a different medium change. And then one designer one day just looked into nature and saw that kingfishers, right, they swoop in from the trees into the water, they dive beak down and get their fish and come back up. And one thing that they've noticed is, compared to any normal object that would fall into the water, the kingfisher's velocity does not decrease by that much. Rather, it's like incredible how much they maintain their momentum to grab their prey. And this happens because of their uniquely shaped jaw. And this exact feature is what they've picked up from the kingfisher and kind of implemented into the Japanese bullet train. So this is one example of biomimicry. So in whatever you create, if you do get inspired by something from nature, I mean, it doesn't have to be so as complex as this, obviously, because we're just learning, we're just students, but like it's always great if you do get some inspiration, like leaves, or like the form of leaves and how you feel like how it spreads out, it kind of like creates more area. And I really wanted to bring that into my umbrella design or porch design, something like that. Or I really like how hexagons and honeycombs are so nice and tightly packed, and I wanted to bring that design into like the sole of my shoe, something like that. If you really want to talk about it, always you could use biomimicry as a pitch. So again, I'll just like kind of condense it down so that you don't get really intimidated. But what really happens is if you're inspired by something, you don't take the whole creature, but like you kind of deconstruct it, and you kind of take one element that you really like, or a few, but like stick with one if you can, because then you can really go into like why you really like that form, and then you could like really translate it into what you've created, and then just a one or two liner, and that will just do the job. It will just look amazing on your write-up if you want to talk about it. Yeah. All right. Sustainability. Now that is an amazing pitch in this era of veganism, in this era of how people are trying to trash fast fashion and everyone's going for slow fashion, and everyone's like banning plastic. So this is like the perfect era to talk about sustainability. If you guys have the luxury, and if you did think about it while building your product, and if it's part of it in any sense, like maybe they did give you some plastics and you didn't use it, something like that, just be smart about it. But also these kind of things are just an afterthought. It's like the extra salt you put. The main content should be your product, your pitch, your what you're doing and what methodologies you use, something interesting about your stuff, or the psychology, color psychology, form psychology, those kind of things, the bullet points, functional aspects, those should be the main content. These kind of things are just afterthoughts, but they always do a lot to set you apart from the crowd. So yes, moving on. Cultural connotations. So this is quite interesting because this is actually, it's a blend of color psychology or even form psychology. Just be careful about using symbols if they're part of cultural aspects of certain people's lives. Just don't be offensive about anything. That is a given, with even if it is or isn't an examination, that is a given in daily life. But cultural connotations, if you use it in the right sense, it can go a long way. And especially if it's something to do with your roots or your region, or if it's something very international, if it's um, something very new and you want to bring that in, like that is also quite interesting. And you could, if you're smart about it, you could use that in a really good way. And to give you an example, it could be as simple as I used red color because this was red and white, or I used like a white dot because this is like a Japanese swimming competition. Cultural connotation right there. Or yeah, I said that because of the meme. But yeah, my point is that these are certain things that you could always use in your write-up, and it could always kind of help you moving forward. So but when you talk about certain things like cultural connotations, I would also warn you that even though it is a very powerful tool in setting your writing apart from the rest of the crowd, it is also quite it's quite delicate. So because it's culture, people could take offense. There is such a thing as cultural appropriation, but I don't think people will go too deep into that in an examination like this. But just keep all these things in mind, use your common sense, and just write away. But this is something interesting that you could use in your piece of writing. Yeah. And about the word remit, guys, this is not an English question paper, so don't worry about it. Most of the time, though, people have the opposite problem than our traditional English essay writing papers and all of that, where people try to use extra words to, or break down words into more words and twist the sentence and repeat it again to write more sentences. Over here, it's the opposite problem of how do I condense it in the most efficient, limited manner to fit everything in such a way that it's efficient. And that really should be your mindset here, rather than trying to write a long paragraph, because that is not the thing that is going to impress the jury. 10 solid points can impress your jury, like bullet points that can impress your jurors, or sorry, like the people who are examining you, your examiners. 10 solid points can do that, rather than 10-page write up or an essay, which you're not expected to do, by the way. It's going to be a small write up, but just make sure that everything is crisp, neat, and to the point, because the point here is not to look like a professional creative writing person. The point here is to look like someone who can communicate your creation. That is it. And for that, rather than trying to use more words, use less words, and always try to make them crisp, clear points. And if there are two kinds of people out there. There are sentence people who like paragraphs and things, and there are bullet point people. So so far as my knowledge, both styles are welcome, but like just make sure if anything is like mentioned, don't go against that. If people do not write in bullet points, we want paragraphs, just stick to the rules. But the point here is that make things crisp and readable. Don't make it like, we don't want those long 5-liners talking about one point. If it's one point, it's one sentence. And if you want to, like, build up something, that's completely okay, but always remember that there's a ticking clock on you, and you have to like really impress the person who's reading it and not bore them out. So just keep that in mind. It's really a very simple thing, and really what I talked earlier about drafting really helps to bring that up. And that is what we're going to go for over here. And because ultimately you have to remember that the point is selling your product. It's not, I mean, selling your creation. And it's really not about writing a lot and showing that I know a lot of words. That is not the point. So if you have this mindset and if you have this kind of approach, you will really come through and set yourself apart from the crowd. And that really helps in working wonders. But a lot of things that I've said today, for a lot of y'all out there, might be completely new topics. Don't worry, you don't need all of these things to be, you don't need to be well versed in a lot of things that I mentioned today, because one thing, I have a tendency to go too deep into certain things, and second, it's just that I really wanted you guys to get exposed to whatever new fresh content is out there, or get exposed to anything you guys can really get exposed to and inspired by, because really this is like last minute tips. And yeah, I just really hope that my content did help you in a certain way. And even if you didn't understand, please don't get intimidated. Always, like, you can ask me questions, you can reach out to THiNC, and everyone's always ready to help you all learn more, or like understand something better, understand a concept better, simplify certain things, or what is the easiest shortcut to doing a certain task or to approaching a certain question, and making life easier for everyone, and really cracking this exam, because it's a real challenge to get a crack at it, because you have a model and then you have to most probably write about it too, and it is a really energy consuming thing. So you have to not just physical energy conserve that, but also divide your creative juices equally for the entire process flow, and that itself is a task, I agree. So yeah, I guess this is it for today. So far, this is how much work I've come up with. So I hope this was helpful. I hope at least some of it was helpful. But yeah, this is it from my side. If there are any questions, please reach out and we'll always be ready to help you out. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so thank you, Nandini, for that wonderful session. So, hope I'm clearly audible.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, so there is a question. So, should write up written in points or passage?
Okay. So I've mentioned this before. There are different kinds of people, and I have talked to like a few people from my batch and my senior batches who have also written. There are two people have written in both ways, and I know people who've gotten in after writing in both ways. So if you can do like a hybrid, that will be great. Okay, but the most important thing is that the content should be legible. It's about whether you have points or not whether you've written in bullet points or not. You can always write bullet points and it won't mean a thing. You can always write in paragraphs and there'll be one point in it, but we all know how to read, so there is no set structure to how you, so far there haven't been a set structure to how you have to write. But unless they've mentioned, this is very important, if they've mentioned in the question that this is an essay type question, or if they've mentioned that please write in points, sometimes they do that because that will save the examiner's time. So in those scenarios, just keep your eyes open and read. If they mention it, please don't go against it, because the pattern can change any year. But so far it's not been a problem. I personally recommend a hybrid version to make it most efficient, but whatever you're good with, go for it. Yeah.
Okay, so there is no more questions. So, guys, if you are having any kind of queries, you can just type it on the comment section. So, please. So there is another question from Raj. So was there any word limit in your exam?
Yeah, there was. I don't remember exactly, but it was like a paragraph and a half. So there was a limit for me, but that was because they kind of ruled out the lines and they said it has to stay within this. And so there was like this kind of implied word limit to what I've done, but depends on the year, but most probably there will be. And this is where drafting will help you out, because you can draft out the points and then you can like manage accordingly. And some people write with pencil first, then write over it with pen and erase it. But if you're a messy person, I always recommend scrap paper and then move on, and always manage your time, because even if there is a word limit, I want maximum points of you selling yourself in your paper, right? So that is the whole point. Yeah.
Okay, so any other questions? You can again, if you're having any queries or doubts, you can just type it on the chat box. Okay, great. So I hope there are no more doubts. So Nandini, any final note to the students?
Well, I think pretty much in this topic, I've covered like whatever I can. But on a general note, like I know you guys have been working a lot for the past few weeks, and you know, if you guys can get as much exposure as possible, talk to as many people who've written this exam as possible, but by the end of the day, just relax and try to be in a happy place, so that you know you can be as creative as possible. So you know, because this is very important, so whatever is happening in your life right now or anything, just make sure that you know you can keep everything at a pause and really focus on being creative and getting this through, because it will be really like totally worth it once you do get through. So yeah, I really think that on D-Day everyone just is like very chill, de-stressed, and then go to the exam. Don't try to learn anything extra new as the exam approaches. Whatever you have, refine it, and just be confident, because confidence is key. And you know, you guys will make it. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you, Nandini. Thank you so much for that wonderful session. So guys, for further, if you are having any kind of further queries, you can just type it on our comment box. The team will definitely give you the answer to your question. So please feel free to type your question in the comment box. So thank you, Nandini, for that wonderful session. So those who are not yet subscribed our channel for this the content like this, the more videos, just subscribe to our channel. So with that, we will wind up the session for today. So thank you everyone, and thank you, Nandini.